I'm very excited to have you as my guest today, Dr. Deepak Dugar.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are a celebrity Beverly Hills plastic surgeon, and you're known globally for your Scarless rhinoplasty. Can you tell my listeners what that is and what is your approach?
Well, thank you for having me. This is going to be one of the best podcasts in the world. The show.
Thank you.
This episode hopefully will be decent.
Exactly.
But I am a rhinoplasty surgeon. I chose rhinoplasty specifically because I really believe in the mastery concept. You know, a master of one instead of a dabbler in some. You know, the whole thing of Bruce Lee has this thing where he says, I fear not a man who knows 10,000 kicks, but I do fear a man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times, right? So with that kind of mastery in mind, just being really good at one single thing, I chose noses. One of my mentors who guided me also did noses, Dr. Raj Kanodia, very famous, one of the most famous for noses in the universe.
They call him Doc Hollywood. Is
Doc
that right?
Hollywood, King of Noses.
Oh, wow.
You know, he has a bunch of dub names. And this isn't like people like Elle Magazine, Tatler, Vogue, you know, these are the people who gave him these denominations. But so he was my mentor for about 15 years, still is till today. We're partners side by side, have a practice now still. And so through that mentorship, I got into noses. And within noses, we do a technique called closed rhinoplasty, where everything's done from inside the nose. No cuts, no scars. It's not just about the no cut or no scar. Everyone thinks that that's kind of the only reason. It's about the philosophy of not enabling yourself to botch a nose, of being minimal, being finesse, being minimalistic with noses. And that's my approach to plastic surgery, beauty, and I would say life.
Can you, for my listeners that don't really understand the process, can you explain to me the difference between a open and a closed rhinoplasty?
Sure. So open and closed rhinoplasty. So rhinoplasty is the surgery of any kind of cosmetic alterations to the nose on your face, okay? Some people have big noses, they want them smaller. Some people have smaller noses, they want them bigger. Some people have wide noses, some people have narrow noses. The key is you want to change the shape of your nose, period. Now, in today's society, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can take apart the entire nose and rebuild it from scratch, or you can just finesse the nose and make little tiny changes. Someone has a little tiny bump, they want to shave it just a hair. Or someone has a little bit of width of their nasal bones, they want to bring it in just a touch. Or someone can have a really shallow bridge, like an Asian rhinoplasty, where they don't have a bridge at all, and they want to build it up. So then you can use rib cartilage or other types of cartilage to rebuild and actually create a bridge of the nose. So different techniques. Now, which technique serves open versus closed depends on your needs. Open rhinoplasty traditionally is a cut at the base of the nose, at the columella, lift the hood of the nose up, and then you can take apart the entire nose. You can literally do anything you want to it, recreate it into any structure. I liken this very akin to, let's say you buy an older house, a 1980s chateau, okay? And it has really good structure, but it just doesn't work, and you just need it to be torn down. That's open rhinoplasty.
Okay.
You tear down the house and you're gonna rebuild from scratch, okay? Now closed rhinoplasty, let's say you buy that same chateau, but it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, has character, it has style, it has grace. It just needs to be polished a little bit. New floors, new walls, you know? That's closed rhinoplasty. We just go in there, we finesse, we improve, we balance, we harmonize, but we leave the structure intact so it still looks like you, just the softer, better version. Not everyone's a candidate for that though, right? Not every chateau can be restored. Some have to be torn down, so it depends on your anatomy.
Why in the past were rhinoplasties, in some cases, just so obvious?
I think the more obvious was kind of a trend that we see in pendulums. You've been doing this for so long. You're a masterful injector. You've taken care of thousands of patients masterfully well. That's why you're so famous and well known for your craft. You've seen the trends go from really aggressive to really natural. And that pendulum swings every few years, we see it. Even today in the Kardashians, they themselves, just recently, Kylie herself said, what are we doing? What are we causing? She's looking at her daughter and thinking, what kind of impact are we making on society through our beauty standards that are impossible to reach, right? It's a beautiful statement that she brought up.
I thought that was really great.
And I think the reason it's so nice is because there are this whole generation that just covets to look like them. We know this, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in the US, in Europe, Kardashians matter.
It's so unbelievably misleading though, because it's not non-surgical.
Right.
And, you know, my patients come in wanting that result. And, you know, I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming that most of their work has been done under the knife, or quite a bit of it.
Yeah, you know, we can't go into any details, but the question I would always say is that the pendulum does swing, which we're seeing with them even in their own mindsets as these major celebrities who made their followings and made their passion based on overly accentuated features. And now they want to go back down.
Sure.
So it's a lesson to all of us. Be careful in your choices. Don't be so obvious in things you do. Don't commit to something for life. So that's where it's very important not to do silicone injections into your lips to make them really plump. You might not want them as plump one day, and it's very hard to reverse silicone, right? Don't go for the overly large breast implants. Maybe think about it, because one day you might want to have smaller breasts to fit into certain clothes, right? Chanel tops don't come that large sometimes, right?
No.
So there's certain things that you want to be very cognizant of. So my impression on the pendulum swing is that it comes and goes, and there are times where there's eras where obvious ski-sloped, pinched, turned up nose jobs are hot. I think right now we're seeing some of that trend starting to die away because we're seeing a lot of these complications from these overly done nose jobs right now that we saw again in the 80s in Manhattan.
Yes,
and then the 90s was
absolutely.
more natural. And then now we're seeing these overly done nose jobs again right now that are happening more in the Middle East.
Yes.
And then people are now coming back to more natural was what we're seeing again. So I think the pendulum swings.
I get asked so often in my practice for a non-surgical rhinoplasty, and it's something, I have never wanted to go down that road. As many years ago at a plastic surgery conference in Sydney, a woman was injected on stage by a plastic surgeon from Melbourne. And the conference ended, he flew home, and by that night she was in another plastic surgeon's office having it dissolved.
Because of some complication?
It was an occlusion.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
so an occlusion is when the blood vessel means that there's no blood flow and then all the skin starts dying, basically?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
So for me, I have always recommended that my patients see a plastic surgeon for filler in the nose. Can you talk to us about the complications there?
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I actually don't necessarily share that viewpoint. And I'll explain why. I have come to terms that I think nurse injectors and NPs and PAs and all the different designations that we have in America, in Australia, I'm sure there's different types of providers.
Sure.
I think it depends on volume.
Okay.
How much you do of it. Because I've seen many plastic surgeons be awful at injections, but just throw their degree around, that I'm a doctor, I'm a plastic surgeon,
Sure.
and they throw their degree around and then they try to do some procedure and they're terrible at it.
Okay.
And then I watch a nurse injector who does the same procedure thousands of times, be masterful in that moment and understand all the techniques, understand the safety almost better sometimes. So I think it's more about experience in each procedure, and I have a gut fear for certain things too. That's why I only do noses, right? I remember in residency doing facelifts, and I just got so scared of all the nerves in the face, and I was just like, gosh, if you cut a nerve, this person's paralyzed. It gave me some weird anxiety. I never wanted to do it again. So I don't do facelifts, right? So we all have these moments, right? And that's understandable. But I think nasal injectable fillers have a role. I think for little touch-ups, little tweaks, I think there's certain areas that are safe. The dorsum of the nose, which is the top of your nose, I think pretty safe. But there are giant blood vessels on the dorsum.
Yes.
When we're in surgery and we lift up the tissues, we see these giant engorged blood vessels. If you inject right into that, huge issues can happen. So I think it's about understanding the anatomy, being really cognizant. That's why I do respect your statement of plastic surgeons doing it because they understand the anatomy a little bit better. But I don't think that it's wrong for nurses to do it. I think it's about safety protocols. The story you told, everyone should know that before they inject. No one should be oblivious to how serious injections in the nose can be.
Your practice is in Beverly Hills.
I'm in Beverly Hills.
And, celebrity is worshipped.
Yes.
What is the most common celebrity nose that patients ask you for?
That's a great question. I think that also pendulum swings. I think the Kardashian, different noses were always worshipped. I think a lot of people envied Kim's nose for a long time. And I think, and today there's a lot of social media influencers that are really worshipped and asked about. And people who have a little bit more of a swoop sometimes. And then some people have a more natural nose. A nose that gets brought up a lot in my clinic is Gal Gadot. And I don't think she's ever had a nose job. I think hers is natural. And some girls come to me and they talk about, I love that little bump she has, looks so cute, looks so natural. And so I think there's this pendulum swing that's happening where the natural aesthetic is definitely getting stronger, definitely coming back. Recently, there is a celebrity, Black China, very popular artist here in the States, who recently was very famously known for getting a lot of her work undone.
Absolutely.
Dissolved by Dr. David Matlock, a colleague and friend of mine.
I watched it all on social media. It was quite fascinating.
Very.
And I feel she most definitely looks younger.
Yes, I think she looks much better. And isn't it wrong for us to judge? Right? It's
Of
just,
course.
but our personal preference just instantly, we both felt that she looks better, she looks younger. And that's what I think a lot of girls are starting to see through their own photos and through their own lenses, that sometimes you do too much filler, you do too much lips, you look older. It almost ages you, right?
Yes. I feel like I haven't had a lot of filler since around 2016. And
in your own face?
Yeah.
That's why you look like you're 16.
Oh, thank you.
18.
You're so kind. But I noticed a few weeks ago that I had a gummy smile again because my face has so much more animation because the filler slows it down so much.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think you're right with that. I think the filler does create some sort of baseline, physiological changes and patterns with the muscles that we don't know long term until you see the effects that happen in your own body.
And the research shows now that their products are hanging around for a lot longer
than initially thought of.
Absolutely.
And back to the nose topic, it lasts in the nose sometimes a long time, especially on a surgerized nose, someone who's had surgery. The filler in the nose can last 5 to 10 years sometimes, we see.
Yeah. So could filler in the nose actually make the nose white, like bigger?
Yeah, we see it all the time. I have this very famous celebrity, I can't mention names obviously, who came to me recently because she had nose filler done by a very famous injector.
Okay.
And the bridge of her nose looks so beautiful from the side, okay? But the problem is he was trying to mask the bump she had from the side, so he put a bunch of filler up here. And then the problem is when you look at it from the front, it gets this wide avatar look, like where it's too puffy, where your physical face can't handle that much filler, so it starts to get really wide here. It looks so bizarre to the point where one of her DPs on the film she was doing was like, listen, you gotta go fix that. It looks weird on camera now. We can't do anything with this. So she came to me to get it dissolved. The problem is we got his notes. He doesn't use hyaluronic acid alone. He mixes it with Sculptra and Radiesse and all these things to make it last longer, which is beautiful in concept. The problem is if there's an issue, now it's quite complex to fix this, right? So what do you do about it? So I do see issues with nose fillers when they're overdone. I think nose fillers should only be used for tweaks.
Yes.
They shouldn't be used to like try to fix or cure a problem, just tweaks.
How has social media had a negative impact on our standards of beauty?
Oof, well, I literally wrote a book on this.
I know you did. I have it right here.
Yes, so beautiful. It's about being authentic to yourself. And then I wrote it based on 10,000 interviews I've done now with patients and just understanding really what everyone's internal dialogue is. I mean, you have the same knowledge, right? All of us do as providers. I just wanted to share it with patients, right? So for another provider, most of it you'll just be nodding your head that, yep, I agree. But for patients, I think a lot of it's really amazing insight because they don't know what we think is obvious. They don't realize that everyone has body dysmorphia, just different waves of it, right?
It's incredible though, of course our patients look forward to seeing us in clinic and, they come along and what I've found as well is that they come in for their anti-wrinkle injections or their fillers, but they're really sometimes missing something from the inside.
Yes. I think all of us. And that's why we go to the movies. That's why we go out and have drinks. That's why we go to our Botox and injectors specialists, right? So I think, I think that's what life is. Life's about feeling something. There's this beautiful thing where people say, everyone's insecure, right? So why does insecurity bother us if all of us have it, right? And so it's like almost like uniting ourselves around that insecurity that, listen, the most gorgeous, most beautiful woman in the world is also insecure, right? The fattest guy in the world, we all saw this beautiful movie, you haven't seen it, The Whale.
I haven't seen
Brendan
it yet.
Fraser.
I really want to
must
watch
it. It's such a deep dive into the concepts of beauty and the concepts of disgust and how we all share these themes, but end of the day, all we want to do is feel, and all we want to do is just have this sense of appreciation for something and someone to have it for us. And that's where I think all this, as long as you remember that and then stay within the safety constraints of it, don't try to cure their depression, don't try to cure their sadness or body dysmorphia, but if you can tweak something and give them a little confidence, go for it. That's my philosophy with it.
I have a wellness program I created for women, which is what I found with self-discipline was the true way for me to have more love for myself.
Oh, wow. Tell me more about that. How do you...
So, it was it was all of the things. Like, I wasn't really looking after myself. You know, I was working very, very long hours and just eating poorly and not really sticking to an exercise routine. And, you know, was still receiving compliments like, oh, you look great. And but I was like really not feeling great at all. So I had a very long stint of sobriety and got really fit and just found, because of the discipline, that I felt so much better about all aspects of life.
Right.
And I wanted to share that with women because I meet so many women on a daily basis that feel the same.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And discipline, love that word. That's the key. That's the secret of life.
Yeah. Tell me more about your book and how, you know, how do you discuss celebrating, you know, true beauty?
Yeah, thank you. So I wrote this, I'm on a very big mission to kind of help everyone understand from the inside of the beauty aspect, the inside of the belly of it, I guess you could say, that end of the day, even after you get some of these procedures done, sometimes you're still not fulfilled. I'm just being honest, you know, and I know it's not a hot topic within our industry because it's all about sales.
Of course.
But it's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, some people get a nose job, some people get a boob job, some people get Botox for lips. There's no more happiness.
No, well,
Nothing
you can buy a
changes.
Maserati and not, it's the same thing.
And like they say, I'd still rather cry in my Maserati.
Yeah, maybe.
So you'd rather cry with your good lips?
I think I'd rather have a GTS, to be honest.
But I think that was the thought behind the book. And so I'm working on visual content for this as well. I'm working on different means and formats of this. But the book was the quickest way for me to get my passion out there. A really good friend of mine, a good mentor of mine, was the one who pushed me to do it, really, Tony Robbins, who I'm a big believer in. And I absorbed so much of his content, been to so many of his conferences, and while he's still alive, everyone should try, well, not alive, but God bless, he'll live 150 years, but while he's still actively participating in these conferences, everyone should go to one of these live performances that he puts on. It's
I have
insane.
never been, like
it's
so
like
many of
star.
my friends have been.
It's a rock show.
And they just, you'll go back, that's what,
it's
you know,
insane. I've been multiple times. It's insane. He's on stage, he performs longer than any rock artist, anyone in the world. He's on stage sometimes for 18 hours straight.
Wow.
Maybe a 20-minute break, that's it. And he is dancing and jumping and screaming and yelling and talking. It's incredible. And the energy in the room, just you get absorbed into it. So needless to say, when this gentleman told me I should write a book about it, I said yes. And then he also offered to write a little excerpt for me, which I was so grateful for to include in the book as well. But the beauty of the book was we interviewed over my career, 10,000 people, took all the little snippets from the beautiful edifications of what they taught me, and then I just wanted to share it. And then I honestly did this as a passion project, and for my daughter one day, when she's of age, I would love for her to read it and realize, as you are perfect.
It's very difficult aging.
It is.
You know, for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, one day you're 22 and you wake up and you're not.
Do you feel like it's harder for women than men?
I do. I think women aren't given as much grace. Yeah, I do. But I also feel myself, you know, aging is a privilege, of course. Yeah. But you know yourself more. You're more grounded, more confident. Yeah. You know, so there's so many positives that come along with it as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with the confidence. So much more confidence comes as you get older because you realize, like you said, the internal dialogue is so much more important than the external validation. Internal validation, most of us don't even focus on. We're just worried about external validation. How many likes did we get? How many comments did we get? How many people told us how great we are? But did you wake up and tell yourself how great you are? Did you wake up and tell yourself how beautiful you are? You know, most of us don't even practice these little daily principles.
Do you do mirror work?
I am a big mirror work believer. In my book, I even talk about basic principles. A lot of people think it's kind of like voodoo or tacky, but it works. Science shows if you talk to yourself in the mirror with positive thoughts and affirmations, studies literally show it creates actual confidence.
I just got to reset this.
No, you're fine.
If you wouldn't mind just restating that point when we go back.
Yeah, we'll start with that. The mirror work. We'll start with the mirror work.
I'll start there, yeah. How you going? Good.
How you guys doing?
Great.
Great.
Yeah.
You can talk
Good convo.
You can talk more than Dr. Sridharani.
He can talk a lot. He can talk a lot. It depends on his moment, but he can talk a lot. I don't ever try to compete with him on that. He's professional.
Very polished.
Yes, he is very. I call him the He's like the Dior version of me. I'm like the more like cavalier, like, you want to get drunk? He's like,
I saw your photos on social, like of your party. Then you had the
Yeah.
scotch. Were you drinking scotch?
yeah, I don't remember, but yeah.
You can't remember the night?
Yeah. Depends. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it looked like a fun party.
Yeah.
It's very, very LA.
Yeah, I am very LA, and Dr.
Yeah.
Sachin is perfectly New York, which I love it. Yeah.
I do really like California.
I'm good to go.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we'll pick up on mirror work.
Okay, so I'll ask you the question. So do you yourself do mirror work?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the concepts of mirror work because the studies show that it's actually activating internal confidence. We looked at these studies in the book. We actually talk about these where people who actually practice basic things. You don't have to do anything complex. Just wake up in the morning. I even have a concept where I want you just to write things on the mirror, even seeing them on the mirror, but looking at your face while you're seeing it. Something about seeing it in your own eyes. It's just as powerful as someone else looking you in the eyes and telling you how great you are. If you can tell yourself that by looking in your eyes, something tricks your psychological mindset.
Absolutely.
And you have this.
I still, listen to Louise Hay a lot.
Oh, love.
I love her. And, even, on a walk or, just to have those positive affirmations coming through the headphones, it's so important.
Yeah. I liken it to when I first got my dog. This is a very random example, but sometimes I'd spend time just petting my dog or hanging out with the dog when she was a puppy. And, my wife and I would sometimes be like, is this a waste of time? Right? Because we're such type A people, win, go. And then what I realized was, if I'm sitting and petting a dog, I'm not doing anything bad. Nothing bad's happening. This is just a positive moment. We need to learn to appreciate positive moments instead of always focused on growth.
Yes.
Right? Growth is good, but so is positive. Right? And so I realized that same thing with positive affirmations. Yeah, you're sitting on your walk. Someone might say, oh, that's so stupid, listening to positive affirmation on the walk. What's that going to do? You know what it didn't do? During that 30 minutes, you didn't have any negative feelings.
Absolutely.
So at least 30 minutes of the day, you felt good.
It's
What's
so
wrong with
good.
that?
But even getting back to Tony Robbins, if I'm having a bit of a negative vibe, put him on.
Oh
my gosh.
Changes your whole state.
He talks about changing
my
your
favorite
state.
thing about him is that he has this thing where power is within you, and you can manifest change in your emotional state through activity. So he has this thing where he wants you to make a move. And
the trigger.
And all of a sudden I feel better. Right now just doing that, I feel more empowered. So it's these little things, if you ever get down, emotional moments, just pat yourself on the back, clap your hands, these little things, it creates energy in your body.
Absolutely. I've seen so many impressions of you in the media and on TV. What's your intention for that? Are you educating the public or the consumer about surgery?
Yeah, I like being famous. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's about education for the consumer. I think I had a couple of really awesome, when I was younger, mentors in media. So Diane Sawyer, I worked with her directly for a month at ABC News here. I moved to New York for a month and just worked with her in her division for a month. And then I worked really closely with Maria Menounos, who's a brilliant journalist. She was really famous. Her rise to fame came through E! News, where she was their head journalist for almost 10 years. And both of them I spent a lot of time with. And one thing, they each taught me different ways and things, but grace, dignity, class, right? The way you poise yourself, right?
Thank you.
Right now you're making me want to be more classy. And then on top of that is always giving real value to the listener, to the viewer, right? Don't make it about you. You can make it about you when you're off camera.
Of course.
Right? You can walk around and be the boss. When you're on camera, when you're in front of that lens, make sure you're delivering something for the audience. Otherwise, once it's selfish and purpose, everyone can see through that.
Of course.
And then no one wants to be part of it anymore.
Yeah. So just sort of digressing a little bit, we went through COVID and it was a very difficult time. The practices were closed. How has the virtual consultation been for you?
Amazing. So I have patients from all over the world. Literally so many from Australia all the time. I have tons from the Middle East, so many from India, a lot from Europe. And so the cool thing is, because of virtual consultations, we used to think this isn't a real consult. It's kind of like this is the intro consult and then we'll do a real consult, right? We looked at our data, about 2-3 years ago, and we saw we are booking equivalently from virtuals as we are as in person. The number of actual surgeries that I'm doing are equivalent. And so virtuals are very powerful, very important. It just depends on how much seriousness you as the provider give it, right? Or how much the patient gives it importance, right? So when we give it as much importance as we do, we make it a whole thing. They meet our team, they meet our staff, they go through different rooms, they have like all these portals they go through. We do different stimulations on the live, like we do all this stuff. We make it like a real live consult. So we want to gain their confidence. And then it's become a very normal thing. The world's gotten smaller. To fly across the world for surgery is very normal. You know, I have patients in LA that fly to Australia for surgery, and I know patients in Australia who fly to me for surgery in LA, right? So the world's gotten smaller, and I think that's a beautiful thing, and virtual consults have been phenomenal. We were doing them 10 years ago, way before COVID.
Sure.
But it amplified during COVID, to the point where even some local patients just do a virtual consult instead of coming in person sometimes.
Yeah, I find it really helpful. I operate out of 3 locations. So if I'm in Melbourne and I do it pre-telehealth with all of my patients in Sydney before I meet with them.
Oh, that's genius.
So it just saves so much time on the day. We've already met, and you know, it really frees up that time.
Do you feel like most of your plan that you create with them during that time is what you end up sticking to?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, very effective.
Yeah, because most of the things that are bothering them have been bothering them for some time, and they just need someone like you to talk to. And that's the one thing I always educate and want everyone to be aware of is sometimes the conversation with the provider is more important. Like literally just doing the consult with you will make more impact than anything else, because sometimes they will decide not to do something or to do more things than they thought, or just to do that one thing. It gives them confidence to do that thing, but you gotta have the conversation. There's no harm. There's no commitment. Have the conversation, do consults. I'm a huge proponent. Everyone should do plastic surgery consults in the whole world, everyone. Just like everyone does therapy. Therapy's fantastic, by the way. Everyone should be doing therapy, but you should also do plastic surgery consults if you have any thoughts of those kind of things. Because don't just wonder, like, why does my friend look so good?
Yes.
Why does she look so good? Talk to somebody.
Absolutely.
We are here. We want to talk to you.
And
right?
it's really, you're being educated.
Yeah.
It's
just
really
like
interesting. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're here today in Dr. Shridharani's office.
Yes, the legend. Dr. S.
Dr. S, you're consulting from New York.
Yes. So I am very fortunate to have an amazing friend and colleague like Dr. S, who we have grown to be very close friends, also grown to be very close colleagues cross country. So he is one of the most premier plastic surgeons in the world. But here in New York, he's established himself as one of the kings of plastic surgery. And I'm very proud of him for everything that he's been able to do with his career here. I have been able to do something similar in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills. And so it's great for us to have this common connection. When he's in Los Angeles, we try our best, Dr. Kennedy and I, always trying to get him to come out there and spend time at our clinic in LA.
Yes.
And then when I'm here in New York, like tomorrow, I'm gonna get to see consults all day. We have some amazing athletes, models, actors and actresses coming in tomorrow to see me for consultation. And it's a great combination because then Dr. S and his staff and clinic hopefully will spend some time and meet them as well. And it's just good camaraderie, and it's the same type of clients, which is the most important thing.
I mean, plastic surgery is an extremely competitive market. How important is it for you to have those positive relationships with your colleagues?
I think it's really important to have positive relationships with enough colleagues.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't go to the conferences and shake the hands and try to meet every plastic surgeon.
Sure.
It's just not necessary. You know, like the most famous bankers probably don't know most bankers, and the most famous politicians, you know, how many politicians does the average, you know, president or prime minister, how many people in the parliament or in the government does he actually friendship? You know, so I think you know the people you need to know. You need to have a few close friends. But I honestly am a big believer in not over networking.
Okay.
I think over networking doesn't do anything. End of the day, you need to reach the consumer.
Yes.
You know, if you want to be on the business side and you want to be the CEO of Galderma one day or CEO, that's different. Shake a lot of hands.
Sure.
You know, walk around,
Meet
get
a
your
lot of
support,
people.
meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be president of the societies, I get it. But if you want to take care of your patients, take care of consumers, make sure that they have the best results possible, you just need a couple of buddies, a couple of friends. That's it.
We mentioned your uncle before.
Yes, Dr. Raj Kanodia,
yes,
legendary plastic surgeon, one of the kings of the trade worldwide.
How did your journey begin? Like, did you always want to be a doctor?
So I always wanted to, my parents told me I always wanted to be a doctor. My parents told me that I was going to be a doctor. Then,
or else.
Yeah. It's very common in Indian households. If you have any Indian friends, it's very common. So my sister's a doctor, my brother's a doctor, I'm a doctor, all three of us became
And your wife
surgeons.
is a doctor.
My wife's a doctor, my brother's wife is a doctor. My sister's brother just married a doctor. So yeah, we have a couple of doctors in the family. And once I got into medicine, I grew up as like an outdoors kind of guy, but very artsy and crafts. I did a lot of plays, a lot of musicals. I was really into like the Bollywood culture. And so I knew I needed to do something artistic. And then I was also really into woodworking. It was weird. I had like this weird, I was a Boy Scout in America. We had this thing called Boy Scouts of America, where you like spend a lot of time camping and building fires and shooting guns. And I grew up doing that in Southeast Texas.
Yeah, wow.
In a really small town. I spent, 200 nights camping. It was like a big achievement of mine when I was a kid. And so things like that, mixing together, I realized I needed to be a doctor, wanted to be something with my hands, so it had to be surgery. So I said, I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. So I was 100% convinced I was going to be orthopedics. And so I was on that journey. And then I was told to come out and meet Dr. Kanodia. I'd never met him before. And shadow him. So I reached out to his office and I said, is there any way possible, please? I must have been a second-year med student. And then they said, sure, come on, and you can come shadow him. And I spent 1 week with Dr. Kanodia. And at the end of that week, I said, yeah, I'm definitely not going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I'm definitely going to become a plastic surgeon. And Dr. Kanodia was my roadmap for life. And I think that's really important for young injectors, young doctors, young surgeons. Find a mentor, latch onto them, and through value. You can't latch on, it can't be about me, right? Everyone wakes up and they think about me. You got to think about what can I do, what can I offer, how can I help, right? And that's, I did projects for Dr. Kanodia, I wrote papers, I wrote books with him, I helped him in all different types of ways, whatever would make his life easier to give me access to him.
Of course.
Because if I'm writing a paper with him, or if I'm helping him with some project, I have to be near him in order to discuss that project. But the goal is to be near him, right? So everyone wants to be near a mentor, but they don't know how to get near him. Help him, help her. Spend time. If someone wants to get close to you and become your protege, help you. Walk with you, carry you. Can I book your flights? Can I hang out with you? Do you need help in your clinic? Can you want me to, analyze your charts? There's a million things that they could do to help.
Sure.
But everyone thinks about, well, I just want you to help me. Just help me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Just help me. That's not how life works. You gotta offer value. So I offered value 15 years for Dr. Kanodia.
Wow. That's
and he's still my mentor today. He's still doing a hard case, a hard moment. I still talk to him, and he gives me guidance. There's wisdom that he has that I will never have because of the age, because of the confidence, the years, the number of surgeries. He's done 10,000 nose jobs. How am I supposed to compete with that when I've only done a few thousand? So I need his guidance and mentorship.
Sure. Michael
Jordan, Steph Curry, LeBron James, they're the best in the world at what they do. They still have a coach, right? So it's important to have guidance and mentorship, even when you're at the best of the best. That's the most important, in my opinion, when you should have more coaching.
Absolutely. Getting back to surgery, a patient has a consultation with you.
Sure.
How does it, from on surgery day, what does it look like in terms of recovery?
So for closed scarless rhinoplasty, it's very different from open, okay? Closed rhinoplasty, 1 week, rapid recovery. They're back on a plane, flying back to Brisbane, flying back to Sydney, okay? 1 week. It's very different. And the reason is because of our techniques. I do no cuts, no scars. Everything's internal.
Okay.
Surgery time is less. Usually our surgeries take about 2 to 2.5 hours in that range. So it's not like the 4 to 8 hour open rhinoplasties. These are much more concerted. All the dissection is really meticulous. We're very gentle with the tissues. You can be traumatic with tissues, or you can be very delicate with them. And when you're delicate, they bleed less, they swell less, right? Tissues respond to the environment they're put in. You put them in a harsh environment, they get more swollen. You put them in a gentle environment, they don't swell as much. We do very delicate maneuvering of the tissues, very delicate maneuvering of the cartilages, the bones, repositioning them in really delicate ways. And we cast and tape it really tight. After we maneuver any bone movement, we hold pressure for almost 10 to 20 minutes sometimes, so that most of my patients don't get any bruising. The ones who do, usually completely gone in 1 week. Very rarely does someone have bad bruising that lingers for a couple of weeks. That's very rare. Most people after 1 week, when I take off the cast, the bandage, can go out in public with a little bit of makeup if they needed to, and be back to life, back to society, back to the world, and they can fly on a plane home. So just 7 nights.
So in terms of swelling and the final result, how long does that take?
So with rhinoplasty, all patients, we say 1 year until you see most of your results. You gotta be patient. Because especially in that first 3 to 4 months, there's a lot of anxiety. I have a lot of patients, so I see a different scope of anxieties, right? Some people are very chill, no problem. I know it's gonna take time to heal. Even while it's swollen, it still looks better than originally, so they're happy. Some patients, they just want the instant result today, and so they're very impatient, they're nitpicking, they're always wondering whether it's gonna be perfect, and and that drives them a little crazy, unfortunately. And so my whole advice is just be chill if you're gonna get plastic surgery. trust your surgeon, do good research. Don't pick a surgeon based on money. Don't go to the cheapest one. Try to take the one that you truly believe in the aesthetic of the work that he or she does. Look at her or his portfolio online. Look at not just one case that you loved. You know, sometimes you'll see one result, you're like, I love that result. I want that doctor. No, you gotta look at all of them, even the ones you don't like, and say, okay, on this nose, I don't love it. But given the pre and what happened with it, do I understand this outcome and am I okay with it? Right? That's what you have to do. Because if you look at some of the outcomes, you're not okay with it. You're like, whoa, if that happened to me, I would kill this person. That's not the right doctor for you, right? So don't pick a doctor based on one outcome. Look at their overall portfolio and make sure you appreciate how they do their work. Because exactly how it's going to come out, we can't control.
Do you think patients have a responsibility to themselves to have a consultation with more than one surgeon?
Absolutely. I think it's super important. I think it's almost ridiculous to not do more than one consult for a procedure, unless, I will say there's some exceptions to the rule, right?
Sure.
So I do a lot of sisters, I do a lot of daughters and mothers, right? So for those, it's a little different because even if they do another consult, they're still gonna come to me because they saw their sister and they saw how well it went with their sister and what the result was, and then their nose is similar to the sister. So I think if you have a similar anatomical issue to somebody and you watch them go through that process with a surgeon, then trusting that same surgeon with your similar type of problem will probably be safe and you don't need another consult. But if you're just a random who's just randomly finding a surgeon, randomly from research, Instagram, Google, listening to this podcast right now, then you should probably compare and contrast what the results could be with at least two providers, at least two. Because if you do two and they're similar plans, then you know, all right, I'm on the right path. But if you do two and they're totally different, then maybe you need a third, right, to really balance it. But don't go crazy. When people start doing 5, 6, 7 consults, that's when you start to confuse yourself. You know, it's like taking too much advice from friends.
There's been a big explosion of rhinoplasty surgery in Turkey.
Yeah, huge.
How do you feel? Like, how do you feel about that?
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's good for everyone. I think there will be a lot of good results that come out of it, and I think there will be a lot of bad results that come out of it. And that is good for us because the natural conservative surgeons, at the end of the day, will always exist and always be needed and necessary. So I love it. And, you know, and I don't get nervous of it. I don't get threatened by it. I think it's fantastic. It's great. I think end of the day, we as really skilled surgeons always have a place and a role in society based on our niche. I don't follow trends. I don't chase trends. I don't try to become the turkey surgeons. They do a little bit more of the lift, a little bit more of the ski slope type of look.
Yes,
aesthetic.
they do.
I don't try to mimic. I'm not competing. Let them do what they do, and I respect their work. Some of it looks phenomenal. And then I have seen some complications from a lot of patients that come home from Turkey after a cheap nose job that they got there for, let's say, $3,000 or $5,000, way cheaper than you can do in America. But even then, I see the fluctuations of price changing. They're going to start increasing their price too as their demand keeps going up. And I think it'll equal out globally. And I think there's a lot of phenomenal surgeons out there who are doing great work. And I think there's some who are just taking advantage of those phenomenal surgeons that are doing not so good work around those great surgeons. Just like it happened here, the big boom of plastic surgery happened in Manhattan in the 1980s. We're sitting on Fifth Avenue. This is the original boom of global rhinoplasty in the 1960s through 80s with Dr. Diamond and the kings and the kings of the trades in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we've seen this over and over. This happens. This comes and goes. Waves will continue. The best will always survive, and the mediocre and the rest will fall. That's normal.
How common is it to need a revision from your rhinoplasty?
Yeah, so I would say revision rates for rhinoplasties depending on 3 things. One is if you had a bad surgery. So if you had a bad surgery, you had a bad surgery. It needs to be fixed, right? That usually happens when you get surgery done in the local community. Sometimes an ENT doctor who's not super well trained on noses just does it while he's in there, you know. There's a story, if I can bring it up, of a very famous celebrity actress here from India and also here in the States now in America, who's hugely famous internationally, who's Priyanka Chopra. And she just talked about how when she went, it was a really sad story actually, and she talked about how she went for some sort of polyp or some sort of internal nasal surgery for some breathing issue. And then when she was in there, somehow she woke up and the surgeon did a bunch of stuff to her bridge of her nose. She's claiming that she didn't tell him to do this. She had nothing, you know, this was not the plan, things like that. And then it was devastating. And she said she went into this deep, deep, deep depression for many years after this, trying to just make herself feel comfortable with herself and her viewership. She did an amazing interview on Howard Stern. She talked about it. So you could read her words directly. I'm just rewording, but I don't want to take the words out of her mouth because she's such an elegant, poised, beautiful young lady that she should tell you her own story.
He does
firsthand.
the best interviews.
She's the best. And
Yeah.
she's just so phenomenally poised and graceful and so talented. Her new show, Citadel, on Amazon is phenomenal. She's just a rock star.
Yeah.
But she talked about that. So that moment happens for a lot of people. And then that requires revision, right? That needs someone to come in and try to be an expert and try to fix it. The problem is sometimes you can't fix it that well. And sometimes it'll never go back to normal. It'll never be good enough. So it goes back to the moral of the story. Pick the best possible doctor. I know the best doctors sometimes give mediocre results too, okay? But a mediocre result is always better than a botched result. And that's what clients don't realize sometimes. They're underwhelmed sometimes with the result. Like, it's good, but it could have been better. It could have been worse too. It could have been much worse. And there are people who live with this on a daily basis. So much so that in America, there's a show called Botched.
Yes.
There's a TV show with two very famous plastic surgeons from California.
It's a very good show.
Yeah, and it's great for the industry.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, when it first came out, were very nervous. Oh my God, is this going to freak people out?
With the
Will
negativity.
people not want to have surgery anymore?
Absolutely.
Right? And ironically, what it did is made everyone just choose better. It actually made the good surgeons way busier. It made the good injectors way busier because people no longer wanted to take the shortcuts. No one wanted the black routes, the back routes. Everyone wanted to go directly to the top. Who's the source? Who's the best? I want to go to them. And so it was the best thing that ever happened to us. I thank Paul Nassif and I thank Terry Dubrow every day for doing Botched. It was the best thing that ever happened to our industry. Yeah.
What's next for you?
I am always on a chase of continuously improving myself. I just want to be the best version of me. And I think it's super deeply ingrained from my mentors, the people I kind of surround myself and my ideologies with Tony Robbins, Shah Rukh Khan, these kind of like behemoth figures of life. And, I look at it as like, I don't want to be them because I'm not an actor like Shah Rukh Khan and I'm not a motivational speaker like Tony Robbins. But in my own world, I want to just continuously improve and be better and reinvent. And so I think surgery will always be what it is. I hope to grow my expansion. That's why I'm here in New York as well, spending time. We'll be spending some time in the Middle East this year as well.
Oh, amazing.
Maybe soon we'll come to Australia too.
Yes,
but,
please do.
Yeah, we just want to grow expansion and then more content. The book was step one of a huge 10-step process. It's like the DC Marvel universe one day. I just want to help people. So it's just about creating content that makes people feel good. And even if one person appreciates it, I did my job.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for today and sharing today, Dr. Deepak
My
Dugar.
pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I'm blessed and honored to have one of the best injectors in the world interviewing me today. So thank you for taking the time.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre.
Great. That was a great conversation.
Thank you.
You're really good.